KNBR 104.5.
Players have definitely responded tonight as Chapman swings and misses, strike three. Goes down on a high fastball, and that'll do it here from Citizens Bank Park. The final 17 hitters the Giants sent to the plate were retired. The Giants are shut out as the Phillies take the opener of this series. Final score of 7-0.
Good evening, everyone. You're on Sportsphone KNBR. 415-808-5627, the number to call if you want to air your grievances about the San Francisco Giants tonight, because it just did not go well. The Jesus Luzardo affair right now, when he's on, he can shut down anyone. And we all remember what he was like with Oakland. And obviously his career has not gone quite the way that we thought maybe it could have gone, just due to how much incredible stuff he has. But when he is on, he is on. And the Giants did not have an answer for that. And this was their sixth shutout. That is leading all of Major League Baseball. And it actually gets me to what I would call a relative annoyance about the San Francisco Giants right now, is that it's all or nothing. And I know that might sound relatively, I don't know, obvious is the right word for it, but it's like you go back to the start of the season, they lost 7-0 to New York. They had nothing that night. They lost 3-0 the next night. They lost 3-1 the night after that. Now, obviously, they weren't bleeding runs the same way, but they did not have much of a pushback. Then they've got San Diego. They're able to get one of those, a 9-3 win and a 3-2 win, but that's pretty much one tight game and then one all San Francisco game. And then they lose 7-1. That's all nothing. They bounce back against the Mets. They win 7-2. That's an all Giants performance. Then they lose 10-3 and 9-0. I mean, to me, this is a trend that we saw right off the bat, and it is continuing. And I know it's not going to shock anyone to say the Giants don't have the bats right now. They don't have the ability to go toe-to-toe with any pitcher on any night when they have their stuff. And when they are quiet, they are definitely quiet. And you keep on going down this trend. When they win, it's 6-0 against Philadelphia. It's 5-0 against Philadelphia. But then they lose 6-2, 6-2 Baltimore in that series. And they lose 8-3 to Cincinnati. And then they're able to, get some wins in there, 10-5. A couple of close ones, 7-6, 3-1, 3-0. But those are good pitching performances against the Dodgers. And then you lose 3-0. You've got nothing there. You get beat by Miami pretty handily, 9-4. And then you post a couple of 6-2 and 6-3 wins where everything's working. And then you lose 7-0 tonight. It's not like there's a lot of 5-4s, 4-3s, 3-2s, 2-1s, that type of game that show the Giants locked in to every single battle. It's either they're winning by a lot, I feel like, or losing by a lot. And that's just how it goes right now with a team that's 13-16 on the year, is echoing a lot of what we last year and the year before and the year before. And we have to go back to 2021, obviously a dream season that they had. But this is a trend that is continuing from one season to the next. And obviously you just saw, the Phillies making a change at manager on the heels of the Red Sox making a change at manager. And I guess in the very, very short term, we're seeing the Phillies with a little bit of a bump as they were able to take the win tonight. And then you see what's going on in Boston, where they're starting to win games again. But to me, this all goes to the players on the field, because you can't fire the team. That's the oldest lesson that my dad taught me. And growing up the son of a sports broadcaster who did Major League Baseball play-by-play, you're told, whether it's Major League Baseball, whether it's NBA, whether it's NFL, whatever it is, you can't fire the team. And you've got to let every single player in that clubhouse know you just got your manager fired because you've not been getting it done out there on the field. So there's going to be the immediate bounce back from these teams. I think the Giants were walking into a difficult situation. If Luzardo is on his game, if you're not a very good offensive team, you're going to be dealing with issues right off the get-go. And that's seemingly what the Giants did with. Now, in this game, Vitello, in the way that he has been able to roll with his starters, I think we've seen it with Logan Webb. He's been willing to put him back out there, take him into the 5th and 6th. With Mahle today, I feel like there were signs north, and it was control issues. And obviously walks leads to runs in that 4th inning. And then he was able to go 1, 2, 3, I believe, in the 5th. And then in the sixth, it all started to fall apart again. And that's the troubling part about this is you felt like it was one of those nights where there were signs. It's easy to second guess now that we're on the other side of it. But if it was me with Mally, I would have felt if you get through that fifth inning, I don't know if he's going to be able to put together another inning like that. That's to me part of what Tony Vitello is going through right now and learning all of his pitchers and learning the nuance of Major League Baseball. And I don't put this game on Vitello. The Giants didn't get any hits. That's not managing. That's just you're getting beat by a pitcher who's got his stuff on that day. So this is a night the Giants are going to have to forget and put behind them because now the Phillies, they're probably going to feel a little bit emboldened. And I'm sure they're also thinking about the fact that the Giants took 2 out of 3 of them earlier this year and thinking we need to get revenge on that. We need to start playing for ourselves as a team. We need to play with a little bit more desperation. Our manager just got fired. So the Giants need to be able to have a bounce back day tomorrow. And this wasn't even one of those games where at earlier points this year, I've not liked their approach at the plate on more than one occasion where I've just felt like they were a little bit too, nibbling or not being aggressive enough or trying to, instead of just hitting the contact, just kind of throwing the bat out there and seeing what would happen. And this was not one of those nights. This was just, they were overpowered. In the final, 17 batters of this game, they were retired after Luzardo was looking perfect for the early parts of the game. I mean, that's just a bad night. That's your bat's not working. Another guy has his best stuff going. I don't know what the specific answer is for that. But for the Giants, again, with their 6th shutout of the year, this is a familiar story. And again, it goes to the overall nature of what we've seen this year, a feast of or famine for San Jose, which plays into the idea of them once again being or 500 for lack of a better term. Now, do I think the Giants can rectify this? I do. Do I think that it is very, very early in the year and I don't really know what this team is as of yet? Of course. If we go back a year ago, everybody's very, very excited about what the Giants are going to turn into, and you're thinking that things are going to be, a very different year. You're finally going to break on through away from the 500 teams you've had, but that's not the way it ended up. They slumped throughout the entirety of the summer. The Devers trade didn't pay off the way they thought it would, and it really didn't turn out any differently than before that. So right now, I think everybody wants to react as we are now almost 30 games into the year, and not to be too baseball, you don't judge a team off the start of their season, although it can quickly crater. You also don't judge a team off the end of their year. You have to see how the whole, as Marty Lurie would say, the tapestry. You've got to see it all through the eyes of the mosaic, and we're going to learn a lot about this team going forward. But right now, feast or famine is the ultimate takeaway on the San Francisco Giants. They either or they don't. And I haven't seen any evidence that they know how to wear their way out of it in any given game where the bats aren't going, because they either know how to score and things are going swimmingly, or they are pretty darn quiet. Like I said, they're not losing 5-4, 3-2, 5-3, things like this, or 7-5. Although I'm sure there is one in there. They're getting beat up, or they're beaten up on the other side. So for the Giants right now, you've got to forget this, put it behind you, see if you can get a good start to the game tomorrow and roll from there. But right now, it's kind of it's a story we've seen before, and I think that's what's most frustrating. And like I said, we can second guess Tony all we want with how long he was going to roll with Mally, who had looked okay. And I guess after the rough 4th inning, he bounced back with the quality 5th inning. You thought to yourself, maybe you could, roll it back out there in the 6th. But then the control problems that we saw in the 4th, those all came jumping off the page once again. It was all you could see. If you were listening to the TV or the radio broadcast, it was very obvious that he was not able to hit his spots. Walks leads to men on base, and then bad things happen. I did appreciate his ability to get quite a jam in the 4th inning, but the writing was on the wall by the time things were starting to fall apart in that 6th inning. So, you get through the lineup a couple of times, and that's modern baseball. I would love to roll with starting pitchers later into games like it was when I was a kid, but that's not how it works. They figure you're out, you're throwing max velocity. And again, the momentum shifts in this game. Even though the Giants were able to get some big double plays, even they were able to get some big moments, if you're coming back out the top half of the inning and you are just getting shut down by Luzardo, the Jesus Lizard, that sucks all the momentum that you might have if you do make a nice double play to get out of a jam, or you do get out of a bases loaded. It's really good, and then any momentum's there, it's gone. Nothing to be happening there, nothing to get rolling, nothing to really start feeling like you're turning the wheel as a team getting back into a game. So this is a Giants team that we've seen this from before, and hopefully they will swing their way out of it. Now, one of the things that I always get back to, as people complained about over the offseason, the lack of moves that the Giants were making to really try and do more with what they were going to do offensively. If we go back a year ago at this point, we didn't know that Buster Posey was going to make, a big trade for Devers at that time. Something like that could be on the horizon, and I'm not going to be shocked if something like that does happen going forward. Not that I think that's the only way the Giants can get their way out of this. I just think that's one of the things that I might see in the future from the San Francisco Giants. I don't know if it's going to be a huge trade or anything to that effect, but I do think Buster Posey and the entirety of baseball ops are looking at things and trying to figure out how they are going to make the team better. This doesn't just seem like an administration with Posey that's just going to stand pat. I don't think he has that type of patience. I don't think he has that overall mindset. So I've just refreshed the page, and I do see that we do have some callers on the line. So let's Joe in Albany. He wants to talk about the Giants' offense or lack thereof. Joe, can you hear me? What's going on, man? Good evening.
Oh, thank you. Great show. And your dad is right. You can't fire the whole team. And the players can get people in the front office, fired. Maybe somebody like Buster Posey, who signed Matt Chapman a 6-year deal for $150 million. His birthday was the day he went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. Not to mention Adames for $187 million, Devers at $280 million, Bader at $20 million, and Verlander for $15 million, our 4 and 5 starters for $10 million. These are signings that are not turning out very well. And so if we don't want to, so that's the players not performing, and that's putting it on. Who put those players on the field? Buster Posey and Manassian. So it is what it is. We're going to panic when they go 10 games under 500 for sure. But they're only 3 under right now. But it's not looking good, like you said, with 6 shutouts. The 10 games under 500 should and will be here, in my opinion. But if it doesn't, that's great, because we're Giant fans. But when I look at the team, it makes me sick, because I'm thinking this 10 games under 500 is coming quick. And it's going to happen, like you said, on one of those games where maybe Logan Webb is pitching and he's winning 6-1 and the bullpen loses the game. That's gonna torpedo that 6-game losing streak into this mosaic, because this mosaic that you brought up, and I love the word mosaic because Marty Lurie always brought it up, and I love his show. Respect to Marty Lurie. And the mosaic right now, as us Giant fans, is we're on the lunatic fringe for sure. Because when it hits 10 to 15, that's when we want the heads to roll. That's when we want ownership to get rid of Buster Posey and stop bringing in.
See, but Joe, they're not going to do that. I think that they are with Buster for the time being because they feel that he is a boon to their ability to sign free agents, which previous administrations have not been able to do. I'm not trying to get political or anything, but I think there is the mindset of a lot of players in baseball that San Francisco isn't a great place to bring your family. I think the Tony Vitello, I think the Buster Posey, the two of them make a 1-2 combo that for every player who has a Bible verse in their Instagram profile, of which, again, that's their prerogative. But I think that if that's what their mindset is, they might feel that San Francisco is not the best place for them to go, because people have a very obscured view of what the Bay Area is like, because we all know that it's one of the most expensive places to live in the world for a reason. It's beautiful. Yes, every major city has some problems, but the Giants are trying to figure out how they're going to bring players up and try and maybe develop some players. That's what I'd like to see as well, develop some bats. That's been the biggest issue for the Giants for forever. They've not been able to bring up these players, but they're not going to just go in and get rid of Buster Posey, a franchise legend. They're going to give him some time. They're going to allow him to try and develop this, but I think they need his mindset, his attitude, where he's from in Georgia with Tony Vitello, coming from the college ranks and coming from the South. They're trying to make it seem like the Giants are a hospitable place in San Francisco to come in free agency, because I think that's been one of the knocks on the Giants in the past, is the perceptions of San Francisco, which I think are mostly incorrect. But they do need to start hitting. But when I look ahead to what's going to happen to this team, because in the month of May, there are a lot of games on the road. You're away at Tampa, then you're home for 6 against San Diego and Pittsburgh, then you're at LA, then you're at Oakland, then you're at Arizona.
Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. Sportsphone KNBR. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Welcome back, everyone. You're on Sportsphone KNBR, and we are now bringing in Ben Ross from Cron to talk about the Giants' offense or lack thereof. Ben, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
Hey, Ted, I'm doing pretty well. Doing better than the Giants offense tonight. How are you doing?
Man, 6 shutouts now. That leads Major League Baseball. And I don't know if you heard any of my opening segment, but I was talking about the fact that the Giants seem to be feast or famine when they win. They seem to win, pretty handily, and they pitch and they field and they get a decisive win. And then they lose. 6 of them have shutouts. They've had some other losses. They can't swing their way out of anything right now and try and get their offense rolling. So I don't know, tonight are you taking more umbrage with their batting or lack thereof, or do you maybe think it's more about, Vitello sticking with, Malley for as long as he did? Because I thought the way that Luzardo was pitching, this was not specifically the Giants' bats. It was that he looked absolutely phenomenal. I mean, he's throwing 99, and then he's got everything else just doing whatever he wanted to do. I know the Giants are not known for their offensive prowess, but I felt like anyone going up against Luzardo tonight was going to have trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I look at it, too. And for whatever reason, Luzardo had struggled to start this year. But, I mean, we know that when he's at his best, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. I mean, look, yeah. I still remember him from his time with the A's, and you could tell he's got special stuff, and we saw that tonight. And, we saw it a lot last year, too. So I think I think this is one that you probably chalk up to just a really good starting pitcher who was on his game tonight. And like you said, he probably would have done this to most teams. But at the same time, I think big picture, the concerns that you got to have for the Giants offense right now are some of the higher paid bats, right? Like Willy Adames is now 0 for his last 24. Rafi Devers is hitting 211. He had another 0 for today. Obviously Jung Hoo Lee and Luis Arraez at the top of the lineup have been really hot recently. But, I think at some point, and it's a long season, so you hope it's sooner rather than later, but you're going to need Rafi Devers to get going, and same thing with Willy Adames.
No, I mean, you need these guys to get going. You need them to be able to put the ball in play and get, listen, if you're not going to smash home runs, at least put the pressure on the defense, make them come up with the right play at times and, hope for the best. Listen, as somebody who watched a Justin Verlander shut down the A's in many a big game, was like, geez, put the ball in play, do something here. I don't need a home run. Yeah. But, I mean, that's the thing about the Giants right now is that it's the strikeouts, it's the not making strong contact, it's an epidemic that's not just a Devers, right? It's everybody on the team. It just seems like they're not able to get any sort of consistency. And I guess, what is the answer here right now, or is this just something they've got to work their way through?
Well, I think the issue the Giants run into is that this baseball has turned into a home run hitting game. I mean, so much offense around the league does come from the long ball, and for whatever reason, I guess they're just not really built to do that. I mean, again, you look at guys like Willy Adames and Rafi Devers, and Matt Chapman obviously has that capability too. But I mean, look, Casey Schmidt leads the team with 4 home runs this year. Like that is going to be tough. And when you're not hitting the ball out of the park, like you said, you've got to do other things. You're going to have to get on base, have some good base running, maybe steal some bases. For whatever reason, the Giants just, like you said, it's kind of been hit and miss. I mean, I feel like the bats had looked better on the homestand, but at the same time, some of your bigger names really have not gotten going. And I think until that happens, it's going to be a struggle. I mean, look, they brought in Rafael Devers for a reason, and he is going to need to be the Rafi Devers that we saw in Boston for this team to make the playoffs, I think.
Okay, but is there evidence that Devers is going to arrive? Because last year he came over and was cold after the acquisition, had some blips towards the end of the year where people thought, oh, okay, this is going to be the Rafi Devers they thought they were getting. And then at the start of this year, it looks a whole lot like last summer.
Yeah, I still think that he will get it going. I mean, I know it wasn't always pretty last year, but he still ended up hitting 20 home runs as a Giant and 35 total for the season. He's too talented of a hitter to not get it going at some point. And he's still, right in the middle of his prime. I think with him, we've seen he's had these types of cold stretches before in his career, even in Boston. He's kind of a streaky hitter. And I mean, I think that's another issue the Giants can run into is they have a lot of streaky hitters. Matt Chapman is like that. When he's hot, he'll hit 5 home runs in like 3 or 4 games. But when he's not, and it's not that he's having a bad year, he's just not really hitting for power, just the 1 home run. So I think we've seen that from Jung Hoo Lee. I mean, I think the one guy in the lineup that's not streaky, who's just consistently a solid hitter, and you're going to get from him, is Luis Arraez. But he's also a guy who's not going to hit for much power. I just think that they're going to have to find a way to get a little more consistency. And yeah, obviously, like we said, tonight, it's hard for me to put too much in tonight because of the fact that Luzardo was so dominant. And, it's still just one game. They came into this series having won their last 3 series. Let's see what they do in the next 2 games before we panic too much.
And the other part of this that I feel is worth acknowledging is there's always the manager just got fired bump in almost any sport to where everyone in that clubhouse realizes, oh, yikes, we just got our manager fired. We need to show up, for each other, for the franchise. Because listen, I mean, I've worked for 2 teams now in professional sports for a while. They do not like it when the implication is made that, essentially they all know that it's them not performing. It's not the coach or the manager per se, even though it's obviously a team, but they don't want to see anybody get fired.
No, and I was thinking the exact same thing when I saw the news today. I mean, look, the Giants, that's awful timing because, like you said, it feels like every time a team fires a manager or a coach, there is a little bit of a spark or a little bit of a bump. And unfortunately for the Giants, they got that bad timing where they're facing it right now in Philly. And I mean, look, as we all know, the other part of it is that the Phillies are a very talented team. Like, they're a lot better than their record would indicate. They've got great pitching. They've got a lot of talented hitters. Like, I mean, there's still a long way to go in the season. And I think by the end of it, they're going to be right in the mix for either, if not the division, at least a wild card spot. So it's still a good team. And like you said, for whatever reason, when there's a coaching change, when you get your coach fired, I mean, there tends to be that spark. And I mean, we even saw it with the Red Sox, who won a couple of games after they fired Alex Cora. So hopefully for the Giants' sake, that bump ends today. Now the Giants can come out and win the next 2 games.
Do you think that Vitello, with the way he handled Mahle tonight, was a learning moment for him, I guess? Because he's stuck with his starters a few times, and it's paid off. To me, after he had the control problem in the 4th, I know he was able to go 1, 2, 3 in the 5th, but it was kind of like, is this going to last into the 6th now that you're getting deeper into the game, pitch count, etc.? I don't know. I just felt after he got through the 5th very, very quickly, it was kind of like, oh, that should have been his night, but it's easier for me to second guess on this side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you too, and I think part of it is probably, it's the first game of a 6-game road trip. He's probably trying to conserve his bullpen as best he can. I am with you. I mean, I think I would tend to lean a little more toward pulling your pitcher earlier if there are signs that it's not looking great. But I also understand the big picture here. They did have an off day yesterday, so the bullpen's rested, but it's the start of a 6-game road trip. I think the start of 9 games in a row without a day off. So he's probably got that in the back of his mind too. You want to at least get your pitcher through 5 and try your best to limit, the number of innings your bullpen has to eat. So, but I do think it's a learning process, because that's something that's very different in college baseball. I mean, college baseball, you're worried about the one series. You basically play a weekend series and then like 1 game during the week. It's very different how you manage a bullpen and the way you go about that. Whereas, the majors, you're playing just about every day. So I think we'll kind of see him as the season goes on, learn kind of who his arms are. And I mean, that's the other thing is, I think we're going to have to see just sort of how I like the rhythm he's gotten into with managing his bullpen the last couple of weeks. So I think he's still kind of learning, just who his pitchers are and, who's good in what spot and who you leave in and is going to get it figured out and who you maybe have to quick hook with.
I know we're all in a rush to jump and judge everything that Tony Vitello is at this point, but the one thing I've noticed is that he's kind of dialed back his intensity a little bit compared to where he was in that first couple of weeks and what we saw in spring training. And now it just seems like he's more finding that rhythm of who he is as a manager overall. And I think he's obviously got some energy. He's got spark to him. I don't think there's anything denying that, but not that there won't be more rough spots ahead, but I do think he had to have his baptism by fire early on, and I think he's kind of finding his flow. Does that track with you?
Yeah, it does. I feel that, and I think you can kind of sense it when you're hearing him talk too. One of the things that he's talked about, I feel like I asked him recently what had been, what's been working for the team during, I think at the time they had won 5 of their last 7 games, and obviously now they've won their last 3 series. And I just think that he, you can tell, feels more relaxed, but I think everybody feels a little bit more relaxed and just trying to have a little more fun and be themselves. I mean, I think Drew Gilbert was part of that, like adding a little element of something different and a little energy. But yeah, I think what I'm sensing is that, maybe that first week, those first few series, Tony Vitello didn't really know, like, it almost felt like he was trying to force it. He had that reputation of being the big energetic guy at Tennessee. And I think he is starting to find a little bit more rhythm. And I think the whole team is kind of just, playing to their personality a little bit more. So they're still playing some pretty good baseball recently. And again, I want to see how the rest of this road trip plays out. I think, what we've seen a couple of times, I mean, look, they dropped the first game to the Marlins last series and responded well and won the next 2. This team has shown the ability to come back and You got Logan Webb on the hill tomorrow. I know he hasn't been all that happy with how he's started his year, but I think you're due for him to have a good outing, and they've shown the ability to bounce back after bad losses.
If Webb doesn't have a good outing, is anybody hitting the panic button, or is it still just a oversore concern at that point?
Yeah, I think it's still – I mean, I actually thought he pitched pretty well his last time out against the Dodgers. I'm looking at his line score right now. I mean, he ends up holding them to the 3 runs in 7 innings, 7 hits, a couple of walks. I mean, again, it's not his best outing in the world, but still a quality start against a good lineup. And I think that, you take out his very first start on opening night, and the numbers are a lot less ugly. So I think, his last 5 starts have been okay, and I wouldn't worry too much about him. I feel like he's going to get it going at some point and be the Logan Webb we've been accustomed to seeing.
And I think that's where I'm at as well, is that the things that I was okay with, pitching, fielding, I think there were some concerns about how their D was going to be, but for the most part, it's been fine. It's not been the problem. It's the bats. It's this screaming problem of the offense and all the inherent problems they've had. This is not just this year. This is going back multiple seasons now. It's obviously, we can talk about their inability to produce bats from their farm system in the long term, and it's something that's continuing to be a problem. So while we see that, Tony is maybe chilled out a little bit, I mean, what is going to bring that inflection point to where the guys feel, I don't know if they need to feel heat, but something needs to be a spark or a moment to get them rolling?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I guess the other question is, at what point do you bring up Bryce Eldridge for a spark, right? I mean, right. I know they don't want to rush him along, and he struggled a little bit last year, but I think it's tough because part of it is just the ballpark they play in. Unfortunately for them, like their home games, it's very much not a hitter-friendly park, and I think we've seen that play a role. But you're right. I mean, look, even on the road, I go back to it might be oversimplifying things, but you need your big money hitters to hit like they're big money hitters. You need Rafi Devers and you need Willy Adames to really start producing, and they've both been slumping at the same time. I think that just changes the lineup completely, because those are the guys that you should be afraid of. And again, you got Jung-Hoo Lee, you got Luis Ariz, you got Casey Schmidt all hitting pretty well recently.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter a ton if you can't get your big time sluggers going. And so I think that realistically, as I said, this offense will go sort of as those guys go.
We're talking with Ben Ross-Akron here on KNBR Sports Phone. Again, the Giants getting shut out for a 6th time this year, leading all of Major League Baseball. So what if Buster Posey is at a point where these bats continue to struggle? Is he, as he did a year ago, is he thinking about making a move? Is he thinking about making a trade? At what point does that enter his mind if it hasn't already?
I'm sure he's thought about it, and I think that he's not going to rush into a move. I mean, I think he'll at least give it another couple of months and wait till we're closer to the trade deadline. Although you never know. I guess he went out and got Rafi Devers pretty early last year when the opportunity presented itself. So I do think that, it's funny because coming into the season, my biggest concern was not the lineup, believe it or not. I had more concerns about the pitching staff. The top of the rotation has looked really good. I had some concerns about Mahle and Hauser and the bullpen. And the bullpen's actually been great for the most part. It has once again been the lineup. So I don't know. I think you've got to be a little bit patient for right now, just because it's so interesting. You look up and down the standings, and I guess we're still pretty early in the season. It's just, you got some, look, we've already had 2 teams fire their managers, and you got the Mets, Phillies, and Red Sox and Astros all toward the bottom of the standings. It's been kind of a strange start to the season for a lot of these teams that you expected to be competitors. Contenders. And so, the Giants off to a slow start too, but, at least they haven't completely fallen out of things. So I think, to answer your question, I think Buster Posey will certainly keep his options open, but I don't see him rushing into a trade here, especially I would think the first move would be to see if you can get a spark from within, bringing up a guy like Bryce Eldridge.
What do you make of the managerial fires at this point? Because I was laughing about this as Mattingly comes in, and obviously he's a known entity. Very different move from what the Red Sox did, bringing up Tracy from their Worcester affiliate. But you can go out there and you can bring in one of the carousel coaches, like I would consider Mattingly at this point, and people slam you for it. Or you can bring in a Tony V from college baseball, buck the trend, and people slam you for it. I keep on coming back to this whole idea is like, guys, I understand that it is very much influenced by the managers, or in any sport. We could talk about, go to hockey. The Kings lost in the first round again, multiple different coaches. Maybe it's not the coaches. I mean, eventually these players have to perform.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think, like I said, sometimes you do get a little bit of a spark in the short term when you fire a manager or a coach. But yeah, it does come down to the players, and I think everybody knows that. And as the old quote goes, you can't fire the players, you can't fire the whole team. And so I don't know. I mean, I still think the Phillies. I have more concerns about the Red Sox, but I think the Phillies are really good, and I think they're going to claw their way back into it. We'll see what happens with the Mets, because obviously they're the next team that everyone's kind of looking at with their manager on the hot seat. And sometimes, especially when you have these high payrolls, there's high expectations, and it's tough. Baseball, more so than any other sport, you can have your stars slump. Like, baseball is a unique sport where you can be the best player on the planet and still go through an awful 3 weeks, where that doesn't usually happen in basketball or football, or just hitting a baseball is so difficult, and there's a lot of chance involved. And I guess that's why these baseball players are trained to say it's a long season and it's just baseball, and you stick with the process.
That's the other part of this, is we are 29 games into 162. There's a lot that will change, because a year ago, everything around this time was relatively pretty for San Francisco. People were starting to think about, hey, maybe this team's finally figuring it out. And then obviously the summer specifically went very, very poorly. So the patience factor, though, that's what I wonder with fans, because as soon as the series or the season started out slowly for the Giants, all of a sudden the fans were talking about the price of tickets, the price of parking, the price of concessions, beer. That became a big, big talking point again. And as they had won some games here, that talking point kind of quieted down again. But again, I just wonder at what point does that patience start to run out again? Because people are saying, hey, we're fifth in revenue, but that's not where we are in payroll. And we're paying for, this much for beer, and we're paying this much for blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I mean, that to me is also the backdrop of all of this, because 3 and 5, 10, 12, and 14, that's a long time ago now. 2014 is this is the 13th season since that point. So it's not wrong that fans are getting impatient.
No, I hear that completely, and I think there is an element to that. I've been interested over the last several years watching Giants fans, and you can tell they're a really patient and loyal bunch compared to a lot of other big markets. And but you're right. I mean, I think that patience is definitely starting to fade, and rightfully so, because you're right, 2014 is a long time ago. And, outside of the one season with 107 wins, it's been a lot of mediocrity. And I think, I think the issue is from team building. The offseason, I wasn't all that thrilled with the offseason they had this year. But at the same time, I get that they have faith in this lineup. I don't know. It's a tough balance. You're kind of caught in between. It's kind of the hardest place to be, is around 500 for several years, right? If you're contending, that's great. If you're really bad, you need to rebuild, and at least like you have sort of a direction. It's this hovering around 500 that the Giants have been unable to escape that can be really tricky, because you don't feel like you need the full teardown. You feel like you just need some tweaks. But finding those tweaks is very difficult, and obviously they haven't been able to do it yet.
Ben, I will let you go because I know you've got stuff to do and you've been working all afternoon and into the evening, but I appreciate you making time for me as always, and I'm sure I will catch you at a stadium soon.
Yeah, anytime, Ted. Thanks for having me on.
For sure. Again, that is Ben Ross, Cron 4, and he's also a phenomenal play-by-play broadcaster. You've been able to catch his work all over the place. If you're not following him on social media. I highly suggest you do, and you should listen to his broadcast whenever he has an opportunity. Last year, 2 years ago, I think he and I, 2 years ago sounds right, were able to call a Stanford baseball game together. So that was a whole lot of fun. All right, we do want to take your calls. 415-808-KNBR is the number to call. We had trouble with the server earlier. I know that there was at least one individual, I think maybe two, that were still on hold waiting to get on. So apologies. We will try and get you back on. So again, 808-5627-415 area code there. So we will take your calls. A lot to get into. I want to hear what players and manager had to say after the game tonight. Again, Luzardo was magnificent. I can only put so much blame on the Giants in and of themselves. So we'll get back to that. You're on Sportsphone KNBR.
Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. Sportsphone KNBR. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We are obviously talking about the Giants after they have yet another shutout tonight, losing by a final of 7-0 to Philadelphia. They have 6 shutouts in MLB this year. That leads the league. Their bats continue to be a problem. Although tonight, Jesus Luzardo, the Jesus Lizard, was absolutely phenomenal. As much as I would love to say that it's just the Giants' bats being problematic, I think just about anyone going up against Luzardo tonight would have had some trouble. If you want to call to talk about this one, maybe you say, Ted, you're crazy. It is the bats. They'll make anybody look good. That's a fine take. I'll not argue with you, or at least I'll hear you out, but it's 415-808-KNBR, 415-808-5627 is the number to call. So if you want to air your grievances, I am here to provide you catharsis, because I know it's a little bit frustrating after that game tonight. I was having such a good day. I was feeling so good. I got in more than one workout today. I was, just absolutely on top of the world. I was like, all right, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to watch some Giants baseball. And the game was just, I wouldn't say it was a dud, because there were some exciting moments. There were some athletic plays right off the bat. There were some fun double plays for the Giants there early in the game. And then it just kind of fell apart, especially in that 6th inning. Malley was having control problems. It didn't go very well from that point on. The Giants couldn't get anything going in way of their offense. And now I'm sitting here thinking to myself, why can't the Giants just hit? Listen, I know that it's a long season, that we are 29 games in, and there's no overreaction like a shutout overreaction. This is not my first rodeo. And I watched Luzardo up close and personal. I was covering the A's with Copes back in the day when Luzardo was, just looking like he was going to take Major League Baseball by storm. And on any given night, he is certainly capable of doing that. He's a phenomenal pitcher when he's got his stuff going. But that's exactly the guy that he looked like again tonight. It looked like the young version of him. It looked like just the guy that can do anything in the given moment to get you out or put you in a bad situation. I mean, he was just throwing gas, and he's got a weird delivery, and there's movement. What are you supposed to do? But again, it's hard not to be frustrated when the Giants' bats have been problematic all year long, because I look a little bit at stats, and we can go and talk about general statistics, of which I feel there's always, even if it is a generalization, there's always some relative merit to it. Like if you look at fielding statistics, Giants are middle of the pack. They're 15th, and that's not anything that I'm going to be too upset about. If you look at the Giants pitching, which was one of my areas of concern throughout the year, was mostly going to be about the hitting, but even their pitching, they're 9th in ERA overall, which I know is not the be-all, end-all at this point, but it's something that it just gives you an overall idea of where they're at. If you look at the home runs that they're giving up, it's not even that bad. They're 9th in the league. They're tied for 9 with a couple other teams. It's not like it's some, obvious, or not that it isn't some obvious issue. It's the batting. You go into this and you start looking at the runs. That's a very, very telling statistic. The Giants are 29 out of 30. That is pretty telling. You look at home runs. The Giants are tied at the bottom with the Brewers with only 19 in the year. At least that was the statistic going into the day. It didn't update throughout a shutout. But, I mean, this is the problem that we knew it was. To quote the late, great Denny Green, they are who we thought they were. They are not getting these hits. They are not getting these big moments that are going to thrust themselves back into games. So, yeah, it is frustrating right now to watch the Giants. Let's go to Sam. He's in Arizona. He wants to talk about Devers, of which, that is a point of contention for a lot of Giants fans right now. So, Sam, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's such a painful watch. And here's what I'd say. I know we're only, 20% of the season over, but we've seen this team, pretty much the same team for half of last year. You called it early. They are completely streaky, and they're hot for a short period of time and not for longer. So that's not a good streak. I just in 29 games to be shut out 6 times. Frankly, it's embarrassing. That's not what. I mean, I pay for the MLB package so I can watch my team because I live in Arizona. everybody is beating Devers with fastballs up. And I have to ask the question of, is his stance still working for him? The foot out and coming back in and then trying to get the bat right and being able to hit a fastball. I don't know how long we can watch the same thing happen and expect a different result. You said it a minute ago. They are who we thought they were. They didn't do much for the last half of last year when we acquired Devers. And I mean, what'd you say? Adames 0 for his last 24. Happy
with,
birthday,
I believe,
Chapman.
11 strikeouts.
I turned it off after Chapman struck out 3 straight times. I mean, you get a leadoff double and you never even advance him to third. That's not good baseball. It's hard to watch.
It is hard to watch, but I also do have to give some credit to Luzardo. He was phenomenal. I mean, I think his stuff would have given any team trouble, but it is piling on to what we've seen with the Giants up to this point of the season. That's the most frustrating part about it. We've seen this before. Like you said, you go back to last year, we saw this over the summer. It was the entirety when the team went from their hot start and they just kind of fell apart during the summer, and everybody was getting frustrated with Bob Melvin because he kept on saying, we'll get the next one, we'll get him tomorrow. And they bring in Tony because they think he's going to be the guy that's going to provide the spark to prevent them from going those extended slides. I mean, this is where it is once again. And Sam, I appreciate the call, and I validate and justify all your frustrations, even if I feel that Luzardo is excellent tonight. Nothing you said is incorrect. I know with Devers right now, it doesn't look very fluid. It doesn't look like he's suddenly going to snap out of it and be that guy. My hope is that you've got everybody on the team except for, Arias right now, and Jung-Hoo Lee's been better as of late. Nobody was good in the game tonight specifically, but I will hope that some of these guys will swing their way out of it. And if everybody goes, or relatively everyone goes cold simultaneously, then eventually guys do have to, the regression to the mean, to use an overused term. Eventually they will start to play like the players that I think they are capable of being. Right now, that's just not happening, and it's got to happen if they want to have a successful season. But like you said, 6 shutouts in 29 games. That's roughly 21% of their games so far. They've not been able to score a run. That's frightening. Like I said, there's no power on this team. You've had 19 home runs up to this point of the season. If you look at just where they are overall in terms of their runs, they are right there at 29 out of 30. I mean, these are not stats that are telling you how you're going to win games right now. And it's great that when they've got their pitchers showing up and they can win a 3-0 game or they can win a 3-1 game, those first 2 games in the series against LA recently, that was really, really fun. And it was tight, competitive baseball, but it is 2026 now. It's not 2012. It's not 1993. It's not a repeatable structure for the most part to try and win a low-scoring game. You need to be able to score your way out of problems. You need to be able to move your bats. You need to be able to hit home runs. You need to be able to hit for power. And that's not what the Giants are right now. And so hopefully they will be able to get things going once again. Again, we are very early in the season. I know we've only played 29 games, but when you do have these echoes of what you've seen the last get any power, where you've not been able to get the hits, where you've not been able to get the runs, it's hard not to be relatively concerned up to this point. So let's get into some of the post-game sounds. Let's hear what Tony Vitello had to say about the way this went down, specifically with Luzardo. That's cut E, if we could hear that one. Cole, please.
He was up, down, and he was in, and he was out. And, easy 95 miles an hour, but he's getting guys to chase down. And I don't know that there was one thing in there in particular that either left-handers or right-handers could have covered. Of course, our guys are sitting on stuff at certain occasions, and the report and all that's given, but he was pretty good tonight.
Yeah, he was very good. And again, with that lack of specific consistency, if they don't know where he's going in the zone, you lead to guys chasing. You don't know where he's going to be going with it. That means you're not barreling up, and you see what the Giants were able to do tonight, which was not much of anything. And I think that is the most frustrating part about this, is that it's a story that we've seen time and time again this year. Like we just said, 6 times this year they've been shut out. That's 21% of their games up to this point of the year. And I'm rounding up for those of you math magicians out there. I am rounding up to 21% from .206. But that's that's a problem. You can't be getting shut out like that. You can't be getting those specific problems over and over and over again. Let's hear a little bit more cut F on the inning that changed the game from Vitello.
Willie almost makes a highlight play, and you can call it a little bit of a tough luck, knock he gives up. And then, the times he's faced Schwarber for good reason. Maybe you're hunting the edges there a little bit, but an infield hit and a walk, they've got two base runners, and again, I don't want to discredit. Turner hit the ball pretty well, and again, Willie would have had to pull something pretty damn special to get him out. But now you got two guys on and the meat of a pretty good order up, and they haven't really done any damage yet, if that makes sense. And then later on in the inning too, you get that ball that's perfectly placed down the line with a little bit of fade to it. It gets down. Without that, it probably gets caught. So it's not like all of a sudden he quit throwing the ball well. I think, a walk probably hurt us twice in that inning overall. And then, Garcia, it looked like he was seeing the ball pretty well tonight with some good swings. So that was the one that was kind of the killing blow. Now that the game is over and we can look back on it, that was kind of the killing blow there. So I don't think any one thing in particular, just he threw the ball really well tonight and they put together a good inning, off him. And if anything, you go back and maybe attack the plate a little bit.
If we go back to that bottom of the sixth inning, Trey Turner started off with a single to center. Schwarber walked. Trey Turner advanced to second. Then Bryce Harper doubles to left. Schwarber scores. That makes it 2-0. Then, of course, you've got Garcia. He gets the double. That's a 4-0 game at that point, and Malley's out of it at that point. Then you get another walk with Stott making his way to base. Then you've got the double at that point, which makes it 5-0, and then that changes the game. 4 hits, 4 runs. You've got a couple of walks in there, and the entire dynamic of the game, of which was 1-0 at that point. You're thinking to yourself, okay, you're keeping it within reaching distance or a reachable distance, for lack of a better term. So that's where things changed. I'm hearing this for the first time, obviously. So I want to hear from Vitello on Malley, and maybe he talks about it here, talking about how he's done well in other games. So let's hear his cut there from Vitello, please. G.
Yeah, I think so. If you cut it off prior to that inning, he's put us in a really good position to win, and he's thrown the ball well. And we talked about it, ironically, at least I did with the radio show last time we played these guys. If you could pull one inning out of the series, it's about as well of 3 games as we've played in a row. But play 9 innings for a reason. They all count the same, and at any point on defense, you can do something great like we did a few times tonight on the defensive end and throw up a 0. And then at any time, whether it's us on offense or the opponent, damage can be done.
If you go back to the bottom of the 5th, though, after he'd had some control problems in the bottom of the 4th, Malley, that is, you get a ground out, a pop out, and a pop out. So I guess from that perspective, if you're Vitello, you're thinking to yourself, okay, he regathered it. He had a rough inning in the 4th. Let's throw him out there again with the 6th once again. And he had been throwing well. Again, the 4th inning at that point appeared like a little bit of a blip, but in what I would consider modern baseball, for lack of a better term, I get very, very nervous when you start going into the 6th inning with a guy who isn't a Logan Webb as he has been over the course of his career. Because Logan Webb, if you're going to stick with him, I don't mind getting beat with him. With Malley, it's a little bit of a different situation. Again, he had some good innings tonight, and like you said, if you don't put him out there for the 6th, maybe the game changes at that point and it's a different dynamic. But for me, it's one of those things where he's going to learn from it. He might think twice about whether or not he's going to stick with a guy going forward. And I have not been as troubled by the bullpen as I thought I would be this year for the Giants. And that's what I kind of think is like, okay, well, they've been decent. Why not go with that? Don't get yourself into trouble that has not been ultimately the problem that you thought it was going to be. See if you can try and stretch it out. And then, of course, on the flip side of that, if you have those problems, everyone's going to say, oh, they should have stuck with Malley. You can't win. It's a lose-lose situation. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because the Phillies obviously took that game over at that point. And that there are breaking points in games where it can be your starter, it can be your reliever, whoever it's going to be, the game will change at a specific moment. Let's hear from Vitello talking about that wild double play in the 1st inning.
It was unique. Again, you got a guy that's known not only for speed, but for hustle activity on the bases. They got a couple guys like that. So For Devers to have a heads-up play there is tremendous, but it's kind of sandwiched by a really good play by a third. I know he's played a long time in the league, but even for him, for Chappie, you end up in a weird spot that you're not used to because of the shift. Maybe the most impressive part of the whole deal, though, like I said, it was kind of sandwiched as Mally's ability around the base just to catch, tag, and also be strong. You got a guy that's a lot stronger than maybe he even appears, barreling down on you.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal play, and that's been one of my qualms with baseball in the modern era that's so strikeout heavy, and I know that we've moved a little bit away from the three true outcome, but defensive highlights in baseball are about as good of a highlight as you can get in all sports. I don't know if there's anything better. They're right up there at the top just because there is so much of an acrobatic, off balance. You never know what's going to happen. You've got a flying object coming through the air. Things can happen. You've got bodies colliding. And so I always like balls in play and see, yes, thank you. I always like balls in play and seeing what happens just because baseball, especially in the infield, the tight nature, guys are getting there, your margin for error or success is razor thin. And that was a great play. Let's also hear from Vitello talking about Willy Adames and the struggles he's been going through as of late, saying that maybe he's trying too hard.
He's a guy that wants to win, and obviously all these guys have confidence and pride combined, so they want to present the best version of themselves. But I know Willie, just off conversations I've had long ago, he had it going pretty good at times last year when the team wasn't winning, and he would rather put the wins in front. So I say all that because he wants to win. So on top of having pride and confidence, like I said, in your ability to go out there and play, now you're kind of double trying hard. And could have seen his swings. Actually, I talked with a Hall of Fame hitter and even showed him a couple of video clips after our early hitting of Willie swinging and just talk through it. I mean, it's maybe as good as he swung the bat. But once the game started again, I'm a coach. I'd love to be angry at our guys and say they needed to have a better approach. And again, we obviously could have done things better, but you can't take away from the way Luzardo was throwing the ball. So he made it difficult to get your best BP swing off in the game. And so I've got full confidence he'll come back tomorrow. And, once a bloop hit falls or, you see one and you get it, it's kind of like before with him and some of our other guys, then it kind of feeds itself and gets the right way.
Again, that was Vitello talking about the struggles of Willy Adames as of late. And again, he's wearing it right now. He is, I believe, overall for his last 24 with 11 strikeouts. I believe that includes everything up to date throughout the game. So that's not a good bit of hitting for him. That's not a good stretch of playing. And again, this is the problem that we thought they were going to have heading into the season. So let's take a break right now. Again, if you want to get in and talk a little bit of Giants, 415-808-5627 is the number to call. Always glad to hear your thoughts and try and provide some catharsis on yet another shutout loss for the San Francisco Giants. We'll be back on Sportsphone KNBR on the other side.
Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. Sportsphone KNBR. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
What's up, everyone? Ted Ramey with you on a lovely Tuesday night. A beautiful day in the Bay Area. It was not a beautiful night for the Giants in Philadelphia as they get shut out again. Their sixth time this year. Roughly 21% of their games up to this point of the season, they have been shut out. And yeah, it was a game where Jesus Luzardo, the Jesus Lizard, as some of you remember him from his time with the A's, he was phenomenal. I don't know what the Giants or anybody were going to do to hit him on this night, but it is a repeating story of 2026, of 2025, of 2024. The Giants and their bats and their struggles at the plate. Obviously, people are rightfully concerned about Rafi Devers' struggles. Kuiper talked about this with Murph and Mack earlier today. I wanted to get his thoughts on Devers here.
My response to that is, so what does the back of his baseball card say?
Well, it said 35 and 109 last year. That's for sure.
Well, I'm talking about his whole career. It's been pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just now, he's decided that he can't hit the high fastball. Or just now, the major leagues has figured out that he can't hit the high fastball. That doesn't make any sense to me. Because if we got all these smart people out here and all these analytics people, why weren't they throwing him high fastballs 4 years ago? So he just didn't start to miss the high fastball this year. He's been like that his whole career, but there are times when he doesn't miss it. And if he doesn't miss it, then you got yourself 30 or 35 home runs. So I still think he's going to get his numbers. I really do. I mean, come on, we can't be that smart now where we just realize Devers can't hit a fastball. Well, he must have hit it somewhere or at some point because he's got himself a really nice contract because of it.
I mean, one of the most true things in sports, obviously age factors in, but past performance is indicative of future performance. And I think that's what Kuiper is getting to there, that if you look at his baseball card, you see that he knows how to hit, you see that he knows how to hit for power, you see that he knows how to drive in runs, and that shouldn't just stop at some point. Now, somebody out there is screaming, well, Ted, it's not a hitter's park. Oracle isn't a hitter's park. I know. I'm aware. I've been to many, many games there. I went to the first ever game there. I'm aware of what the stadium is. However, Rafi Devers will eventually find some form of rectification and look like the player that they traded for. Everybody on that team will eventually turn into what they thought they would be. The question is can they sort of compound it? Is it not just one guy getting hot at a time, like we've seen, relatively lately with the Reyes right now? He's a batting title guy. There's no surprise that he's hitting the way he has. Jung Hoo Lee has been better lately. That was relatively expected, but you need everybody. You need your meat and potatoes of the lineup to come up with these big moments and these big hits. And eventually, if all the guys can get rolling, then you've got momentum on your side. It becomes a little bit more of a downhill battle because right now everything the Giants are doing is uphill. They're 13-16 at this point of the year. They've been shut out 6 times. They are one of the worst offensive teams in baseball by pure old school statistics. We look at their runs scored. We look at their just overall ability to produce. They're not hitting for power. Eventually, a Chapman will hit how he's supposed to hit. Eventually, a Devers will hit how he is supposed to hit. Eventually, a lot of these guys are going to all start looking like the players that we expect them to be. But that doesn't make it any easier right now with the Giants, because the frustration of watching them year after year, I wish I was pointing to a short-term trend. I really do. I wish I could say that this is unusual for San Francisco, but it's not. This is something that we've seen for a long, long time, and this is why they made the change at manager. And listen, I don't think this is Bob Melvin. This is some indictment on his career. He's been a very successful manager over the course of his career. But I think they obviously made that change because they wanted a little bit more of that spark. They wanted a little bit more of somebody who's going to change the dynamic so that these slides don't get more protracted overall. And so that's why you bring in a Tony Vitello. Well, they've been playing better baseball as of late, even with the loss tonight. I think it's 6 out of their last 10 they've won. But now it's a matter of don't let this snowball once again. Don't let this start to get out of control, especially when you look at the schedule ahead for the month of May with a lot of it on the road, extended, longer road trips. It's a tough schedule for the Giants. You've got to make sure that doesn't happen. You've got to make sure that you continue to play, and nobody wants to hear this, but you got to play on the road around 500. So if you've got a series here in Philadelphia that you feel they're still reeling, they had their bounce back tonight, okay, make sure you get them in the next game. Make sure you are ready to go so that you can get going early tomorrow, get your bats going, and start finding a little bit of momentum. The Giants, again, every time it feels like they get the ball rolling, one of these shutouts occurs, or they get blown out like 9-1 or something. You've got to have consistent results. You've got to feel like the bats that show up one day are going to show up the next day, are going to show up the next day, are going to show up the next day. That's not what the Giants have been up to this point. They have just been all or nothing. I talked about it. I opened the show with it. I mean, you've seen the results. It feels like they're either winning 7-1 or they are losing 7-0, something to that effect. And that's not a good way to go about your season. You need to be able to fight your way back into games. You need to know you can go down and start turning the wheel, moving the runners on base, and get back into it. You can't just be once you're down, you're out. Or else, if that happens, then you're going to be looking at a 500 season-ish or worse. All right, we're going to take a break. On the other side, we're going to talk with Steve Berman of The Athletic. You are on Sportsphone KNBR.
Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. Sportsphone KNBR, streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Welcome back, everyone. Ted Ramey with you here on a Tuesday night as the Giants get shut out at the hands of Jesus Luzardo and the Phillies. It's the sixth time this year they have been shut out. That leads Major League Baseball. It is perhaps something you've seen far too often over the last couple of years, the Giants bats not showing up. And here to talk about that and more, we've got Steve Berman of The Athletic. Mr. Berman, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
Not much. Just trying to score a run here tonight to help out the Giants if we can possibly.
I mean, at this point, they've been shut out in 21% of their games, and I know that these guys will have a regression to the mean of what they're supposed to be, but I don't understand how all of these professional and proven hitters are all seemingly slumping at the same time. I mean, it is, I guess we've seen it before. It reminds me a lot of last year, but this shouldn't be happening based on just pure averages, right? The law of averages, like it shouldn't all be happening at the same time like this.
Well, averages, yeah, I think that's an interesting thing you bring up because the on-base percentage for the Giants is pretty low, and the reason why is because this team just doesn't walk at all. They had no walks tonight. They had 2 hits, and you think 2 hitters shut out, that's going to be the headline. But they had no walks and 12 strikeouts, and this team coming into today had by far the lowest walk rate in baseball, like not even close. 5.7% walk rate. The next lowest team is 7.1%. And I think that, there was a thought going into the season that this is a team that wants to make contact. They're trying to put the ball in play. That's great. But you also have to get on base as well. And the guy who you think about, is sort of the poster boy for contact and putting the ball in play, Luis Arias, he's been actually one of the bright spots of the season. This team just isn't walking at all. Devers is not walking at all, and he's probably the main problem I would say right now, just because he's just not hitting at all. And this franchise, this payroll is hamstrung with a guy who's making $30 million a year, for the next 7-8 years, and he's just not hitting. And he's not walking either anymore, though. He used to walk all the time, but this team just doesn't walk anymore. Actually, as an editor for The Athletic, one of the writers that I work with is Andrew Baggerly. And actually, I think that he's writing something about that right now, about the fact that this team just doesn't walk at all.
So with Devers, Dwayne Kuiper, who I respect immensely, he said to look at the back of Devers' baseball card, of which I do agree with that. And not to say that I'm just, being a sycophant there to Kuiper, but I do think that when we talk about sports, even if aging does play into it, past performance is relatively indicative of future performance. So what has happened to Devers with his consistency, specifically since he's come here to San Francisco? Because I feel like the guy that I used to watch in Boston, it just doesn't look like he's ever found a comfortable groove at the plate with these Giants.
It just seems like they're hoping that maybe when the weather warms up across baseball, and I guess it doesn't really warm up in San Francisco until the end of August. Yeah, October, it's actually really nice in San Francisco. They got to hope for something here. But another thing that we've been working on a lot at The Athletic is that he's just not catching with the fastballs at all. So that's the issue. They're just pounding him in the zone and sometimes away from the zone too. But four seamers. And, he actually did hit one four-seamer against Shohei Ohtani for a nice single, but otherwise it seems like he just cannot catch up to velocity right now. And I don't know if that's something to do with mechanics or anything else, because I don't think it's a situation where he's like so old that you're worried about him falling off a cliff right now. So it could be a multitude of things. Who knows what's going on in his personal life? He had to move across the country, and maybe he just hasn't gotten comfortable here. But either way, the Giants need him at some point to figure this out really quickly, because the entire lineup is sort of centered around him. And if he's not doing what he's supposed to do, then the rest of the guys aren't going to look as good, and the rest of the lineup is not really full of stars. I mean, it's full of decent players, but Devers kind of has to be the dude, as Buster Posey called him.
So no one figured out before that he had this trouble with the four-seam fastball? I'm not trying to say that in the pejorative. I'm just saying it when I hear it spelt out like that, that sounds, I'm just incredulous that suddenly the league has figured out a guy like that. Was that the case? Are they now just going at him with that pitch and he can't catch it?
No, I think it's more of a quick adjustment that the league has made because they see he can't do it right now. It wasn't a situation where in previous years he couldn't hit the four-seam fastball. He was actually pretty good against them. His slugging percentage is great. His on-base percentage is great. It was just in the past, I don't know about last season either. Actually, last season he was fine against four-seamers. Just since this year started, he has not been able to catch up to velocity. And right there, that's an easy game plan for an opposing team. If you know that, you just keep doing it until he can actually show he can prove he can hit against him.
Any idea what's going on with Adames?
I don't know. He had a terrible start in the beginning of last year too. He actually looked like he was coming out of it earlier on a couple weeks ago. So I think he's probably going to be fine. He had a tough start last year as well. But that's another one too. But I think that's not as big of an issue because you can always slide him over to second base, and the Giants have a bunch of shortstops in the system that are ready to come up in the coming years. That Johnny Level, Hernandez, Gonzalez, guys that. So I think shortstop they're pretty well settled, and a second base that would actually probably make it easier for him in terms of his everyday play as a hitter too. I'm not so worried about Adames. It's just that the Devers situation right now, they need some sort of anchor. This is a guy that optimistic Giants fans are thinking of as somebody who'd be hitting like 35 home runs this year. Once he gets comfortable here, he's going to be fine. He has enough power that doesn't matter that he's at Oracle Park. And right now, it's not really it doesn't seem like it's the park. He's just not really actually barreling up balls.
In this game specifically, though, Luzardo looked amazing. And when he's on like that, he has some of the nastiest stuff in all of Major League Baseball. I think anybody would have had trouble with what he was throwing tonight. Can we is there any way to view tonight as a relative one-off, or is it just too much compounded upon what we've already seen?
Yeah, the Giants don't do that well against dominant lefties usually, which they actually did pretty well against his teammate, but a couple weeks ago. But I think that this is probably just a one-off, and it seemed like at the end of this homestand that the team was actually starting to hit. Casey Schmidt was hitting the cover off the ball. Drew Gilbert, even when he was, I think he was just 1 for 4 on Saturday, but all of his hits were at least 96 miles an hour. Jung-Hoo Lee has been kind of on fire lately. So it seemed like also you have to think about it too. This is a team that just changed their manager as well. Right. So maybe it was a situation where everyone on the Philly side was tick up in terms of intensity, and the Giants came in from the West Coast and were like, all right, we had a nice little series against the Marlins, and and didn't really realize that the Phillies were like, okay, actually we have to start playing baseball now. I don't know. You never know. The manager getting fired thing works. Another writer that I manage is covering the Red Sox for us, and they won 5-3 right after they fired Alex Cora, which was a very interesting thing that happened over the weekend as well.
Yeah, I was expecting Cora to be the manager for the Phillies because Dombrowski's there, and then that didn't happen. It was Don Mattingly. By the way, this is how I felt old. I saw an article that said, who is Don Mattingly? I said, who's Don Mattingly? Like it had to be explained to Phillies fans. I was like, what is going on? Like, I know I'm 43 now, but people should know. Like, he was recently, manager of the year. Like, obviously he's been with the Dodgers. You look at his career. I mean, I don't know, man. It's stuff like that kind of starts to freak me out. I was like, we really need to have explainer articles on this. But that also,
Ted, were you looking at People Magazine? What site were you looking at here?
I don't want to name the site. I'm not going to be a hater. I don't believe in media hate. I'm just going to say it was out there, and it made me scratch my head. I was like, what do you mean? Who's Don Mattingly? But that's another conversation to make you laugh. I just wanted to bring it up. But the thing about this is that when we have these managerial changes, and I'm watching this now in all sports, right? Where they change the coaches, they bring in guys. You can go to the carousel and you bring in another coach, like Don Mattingly. Obviously, he's been around, and people can slam them for that. Or you bring in a Tony Vitello, who's a change of pace, who comes in from the college game, and people slam you for that. I mean, this is on the players. I was roughing with a buddy about this. One of my favorite quotes of all sports, all time, comes from Bruce Bochy. It was during the screening of their 2012 championship run. And if you'll recall, Fox had just debuted these special high-speed cameras that were catching the game in extreme slow-mo. And there was that one play, I believe it was in the NLCS, where Hunter Pence hit the ball 3 times. His bat broke, and it hit 3 times. And in the midst of that screening, Bruce Bochy, in a dead silent theater, just screams out, "Great coaching." And I thought it was such a perfect encapsulation of how ridiculous it is everybody wants to give coaches all the credit in the world, but they also want to blame them for everything. It's like, guys, they're not on the field. They're not the ones doing this. And I don't know. I'm just kind of laughing because I'm watching the Phillies, an ostensibly very, very good team, make a change. And I'm not saying, like, I don't know. That's not the manager. And again, even as much as I have questions about Tony Vitello, he's not the one not hitting the ball in San Francisco right now.
Yeah, there's the only thing you can actually ding Vitello on offensively is that he's just not getting the rest of the bench involved. Christian Costa like 7 at-bats in the first 15 games of the season. You want to cycle guys in just to make sure that they're actually fresh. We actually knew that Dombrowski was going to fire Rob Thompson, days ago. I actually thought it was going to happen on Monday. And Don Mattingly's son is in the front office. And Dombrowski, we actually reported today that Alex Cora was offered the job by Dave Dombrowski, but he said no, which makes sense because Alex Cora just dealt with a mess in Boston, and he's not even halfway through a 3-year, $21.5 million contract that he's still getting paid on. So why would he take on a tough job right now? Right after dealing with all this, he's got to decompress a little bit. But yeah, I mean, and the reason why he got fired is because Craig Breslow, the president of baseball operations, I guess they call it the chief baseball officer in Boston, but he's under enormous pressure, and that's why he fired Alex Cora and 5 coaches who are close to Alex Cora on Saturday, and he kept all the coaches that he was close to, and then hired Jim Tracy's son, Chad Tracy, to manage the team because he managed all the guys that were in the AAA ranks that he's hoping will now be the young core that he's put together. So really, most of it is whenever you blame the manager for what's happening, it's mostly a CYA thing kind of deal, where the president of baseball operations is like, all right, it's not working. I'm not going to fire myself. The owner doesn't want to fire me yet. I better do something to make sure that it looks like I'm doing something here to change things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it doesn't seem like right now that the Giants are in that mode right now because they have a new manager. No. But I don't know. You're only as good as your talent. That's pretty much what you're saying with the Bochy story about that's good coaching right there. When Hunter Pence had that 3 knock base hit, sometimes is dumb luck.
Well, to get back to Tony Vitello, is that the perception was that last year that maybe Bob Melvin was a little bit too, I don't know, not reactive enough to some of the doldrums that the team got into, that he wasn't there to provide a spark to get them out of those tough times, especially over the summer after they'd had a really good start to the season, and maybe Devers didn't come in and have the impact long-term that they hoped he would, except Vitello has actually calmed down from the start of the year, and I think he kind of learned that lesson that he was a little bit hot, and now he's a little bit more measured, and he's, I enjoy his post-game pressers because he usually has some very good insights, but, I mean, now that we've seen yet another shutout, and we are seeing the long-term trends of what's happening with their offense, what's his play now? Because I'm sure he doesn't want to be viewed as this, I don't know, he's probably not even worried about it, but I'm sure he doesn't want to be viewed as a hothead or somebody who's, too much of a rah-rah guy, as opposed to being able to just manage the team and the game.
That's a really good question. I don't really have an outstanding answer. I mean, the main problem for this team is that, one, they don't walk, and there's almost no team speed whatsoever. They never run. That's one of the things that has really just flummoxed me over the last several years, ever since they changed the rules that make stolen bases easier to get with the bigger with the bigger bases and all the other rule changes that they made. The Giants seem like they've just ignored that. And I might have actually said it to you last time we talked on the radio. I just don't understand. This team never runs. And the reason why is because they've consistently put together a team full of slow dudes. Matt Chapman is actually a really good base runner. You know that. But they don't have any blazers at all. Like this. So whenever anyone gets on first base, you need like 3 hits to knock them in. And that's tough, unless you have a game where you have 3-4 home runs, which they have had a couple of those in the past week and a half that have driven their numbers up from like the absolute bottom to kind of sitting right at the bottom. But if you can't hit the ball in the ballpark all the time, you got to make something happen. But I don't really know what he could do. I mean, like, you're not calling hit and runs, you're not bunting, so it's one of those deals right now where maybe you call up Jesus Rodriguez from the minors. He's a catcher who has great contact skills. With Daniel Susac out and Patrick Bailey, he had 2 strikeouts tonight and no hits. Well, pretty much the whole team had no hits. He's got a OPS of, I think, 397. You got to have someone somewhere in the lineup where you get something going on where the line moves, because you're not going to move the line with speed because they just don't have any speed.
I thought you were going to say they don't steal because they don't get on base in general. But I guess
well, that too.
Your point is, which is a little bit alarming as well. But I mean, watching this team right now, the other thing that I looked at when I was watching it yet again, I was thinking to myself, okay, this is their 6th shutout, which would, again, be the most in the league. If you look at a lot of their games this year, it's very much all or nothing. They're either winning big or losing big. What is that, just the feast of famine if the bats show up and they have some good pitching, and then the other and the polar opposite is the bats don't show up and they just get rocked? I find it strange that it seems to be so polar in terms of how they win and or lose.
A lot of it's based on, I think, who's on the mound that night too. It seems like right now, one of the big things I think that has been the major failing of Buster Posey and the front office and the ownership too, because the ownership is against signing pitchers to long-term deals, is they knew they needed pitching because the young pitching is not coming up. It's just not. Carson Whisenhunt, his numbers in Sacramento aren't that good. There's nothing really like right there ready to bring up. So, they signed Tyler Mahle and Adrian Hauser. Okay. So Tyler Mahle is a guy who, he pitched really well last year when he was healthy. He's actually been healthy this year. He's had one really good start and one okay start, and the rest of them terrible. Adrian Hauser is pretty much not even major league caliber at this point. So that's 2 fifth-year rotation. Lane Arup is pitching awesome. Logan Webb started out really slow. I think he's gonna be fine. Logan Webb, Robbie Ray's pitched really well, but really this team is built to be based on pitching and defense. The defense has actually been okay, but yet when they get a good start, they actually seem like they're able to figure it out offensively. Usually not in the beginning of the game, more in the mid part of the game and the late part of the game. And then they win 6-2, right? But when they fall behind, then it just seems like everything craters.
It really does. If we look at the trends from fans this year, and I saw a lot of dismay on social media tonight. But when they started off poorly, before they had a little bit of a rectification recently, the fans got very, very angry, and they brought up the fifth in revenue, yet that's not where their spending is. And they brought up the price of beer, and they brought up the price of tickets. And Giants fans have been very, very patient, but 2010, 12, and 14 were a long time ago. This is now like multiple years of middling, of which they think they're going to be taking a step forward. And at 13 and 16 with a lot of baseball left to go. I'm not trying to get ahead of myself, but I felt like it came out really, really quickly of fans being ticked off. Did you get that vibe as well?
Oh, absolutely. And it's tough to blame them. Honestly, the mirroring between this team and the Red Sox has been going on for, decades almost now. The Dodgers are the Yankees. The Red Sox and the Giants are sort of playing that other role. And the Red Sox are kind of in the same way. The Red Sox have started looking at their team as a business. They have a lot of different business entities. It's not the exact same in terms of ownership as the Giants, but they have definitely sort of placated themselves into we're looking to make the postseason, and then whatever happens, happens. And there's nothing fans like less than that. Fans want their team to say, hey, we're going to take over this division. We're going to take over this National League or American League.
Well, let me interrupt.
We're going to run it.
But you know where that comes from, right? That's the whole Billy Beane Oakland Athletics. You get in and then it's a crapshoot, which always is brilliant as Billy Beane was in his application of metrics to the game of baseball. I find that to be absolute just nonsense. It's not a crapshoot. And if anything, we've seen recently how much money matters.
Yeah, I agree. And if there's any lasting part that he has in the game now, because everything else he's done has been, copied 10 times over, it's that. And we saw in Seattle too. Jerry Dipoto said, "Hey, our goal is to win 57% of our games because that means that we're going to put ourselves into the position to be one of the wild card teams." The fans went crazy. And then they calmed down because Cal Raleigh hit, 80 home runs or whatever, and they actually had a nice postseason run. But if they didn't, the fans would still be upset because, you don't want to just do the bare minimum to get to where you want to go. And the fact that these guys always keep vocalizing this, like, hey, all we got to do is just get a ticket to the dance. And once we get a ticket to the dance, you never know, maybe we could win. Which kind of means that you're like not even that confident in your own team. It's more like,
right.
Well, you never know. Maybe our team can get lucky, and our fans will be so happy because we have the Cinderella run, against the hated Dodgers, and that's it's just one of those deals where it just seems like you're setting yourself up to fail, because if you set yourself up like that, that means your margin of error means if 5 things go wrong, you just miss the playoffs entirely. If you set yourself up to be a dominant team and you spend the money that it takes to actually be a dominant team, and you have the farm system that it takes to be a dominant team and everything else, and you're actually like prepared to, you're thinking I'm going to win 95 games or 100 games. If you don't do as well as you thought, then maybe you win 90. In this case, they're all gunning to win 87.
No fan wants to hear we need to win 57% of our games. That is the least inspiring, even if it's above 500, which Giants fans would love. That is one of the least inspiring things that you can say to a fan base is we need to do this. It's just, I don't know, man. I get so frustrated with this type of thing because one of the things I hate is when people say, oh, the Giants got lucky when they won 3-5. And I always say to them, no, they didn't. They had dominant pitching. They had a bullpen that Bruce Bochy knew how to use better than anyone in the game of baseball to when it got to quote unquote tournament time. He knew exactly how to manage situations, and they had some pretty good players who maybe were a little bit above their heads, but you don't get lucky 3 times in 5 years. And I feel like people think that because it's been popularized to be like, oh, well, if a team just gets in, then anything can happen. And I'm like, I don't buy that. But at least that's a little bit different than saying, well, if a team wins 57% of their games, then maybe they too can go dancing. It just sounds so weak. 57% of our games. Well, that's going to fire up a fan base.
Oh yeah, 57. Yeah, there's no way Brian Sabian would have ever said anything like that at all.
No.
What the fan base wants is for a GM to say, "We just want to kick everyone's ass." That's it. Like,
yeah, that's.
But the thing is, a lot of people who've been hired, and actually, Buster Posey's probably sort of on the outside of this because he's a totally different style of person that they've hired for president of baseball operations. But most of these guys are usually, whenever they get annoyed by a question, they start flexing how smart they are, and they start actually telling you the honest parts about, like, well, if you guys actually knew, like, spending $100 million to try to win 5 extra games is stupid, because what if you do and you don't actually make it to the playoffs? But then they say it, and then it just makes the fans incredibly irate. Doesn't make any sense, but that is actually the cynical mode of baseball right now. Everyone right now in baseball is like, well, the Dodgers will actually, try to spend all the money they can to do whatever they can, but we can't really compete with them. So what we're going to do is try to be the Blue Jays, even though the Blue Jays have actually spent quite a bit of money, but
right.
but still, but the Blue Jays haven't spent like as much money as the Dodgers. And like, we're just trying to give ourselves a chance. That's it. All we need is a chance, and it's fine. But we're not going to go any farther because that would just be stupid. It's a bad investment. So that's the thing. Everything is an investment right now. It's real estate investments around ballparks. It's investments in pitching that, it's tough to invest long term in a pitcher because the pitcher might get hurt. So all of this is based off of spreadsheets and mathematical equations. And it's not great for fans, but that's the way these teams are run.
At least the Giants, in their echoing of Boston, never traded Mookie Betts. To me, that's still an unforgivable sin. So that's,
well, the fact that the Giants didn't
didn't
actually get in on that action was where they were actually really messed up, because they didn't have the farm system to give up. Even though the players the Dodgers gave to the Red Sox weren't that good, the Giants didn't have name prospects at the time because their farm system was so poor. But man, getting Mookie at that time would have been very, very, very nice.
Oh, would have been very nice indeed. Mr. Berman, I will let you go. You've been very generous with your time. I appreciate you coming on with me as always. We'll do it again soon. All right, man?
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate it.
Again, that is Steve Berman of The Athletic joining us. On the other side, because I don't think you want to talk more about the Giants and the struggles they had tonight getting shut out yet again, we're going to talk some Sharks hockey and a little bit of NHL with Alan Hoshida of NBC Sports California. That's coming up next here on Sportsphone KNBR.
This is Sportsphone KNBR. Dial the digits or send us a text at 415-808-KNBR. We're streaming on YouTube all damn day at KNBR 1045.
Welcome back, everyone. You're on Sportsphone KNBR. Ted Ramey with you, and we are deviating just a little bit from talking about the Giants getting shut out a sixth time this year, which leads all of Major League Baseball, because there's only so much I can tell you about a shutout, and it involved a 0, and it involved Jesus Luzardo, the Jesus Lizard, looking absolutely phenomenal. And not to absolve the Giants here, but I think anyone going against Luzardo tonight would have had a tough time. But that's a discussion that we can maybe take back up tomorrow when I'll be back with you, seeing how the Giants do in game 2 of this set with Philadelphia on the road. But now we're going to bring in Alan Hoshida, the host of Sharks pre- and post-game live on NBC Sports California. Alan, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
Hey, Ted. It's been a while. So longing to hang out with you. It's been so long.
I know, you're used to seeing me multiple times a week, and the Sharks are not in the playoffs. But actually, because baseball has had a couple of managing changes, I've been laughing about this with the Red Sox firing their manager, with the Phillies firing their manager this morning on the eve, or on the morning of playing the Giants. I'm laughing at the fact, and maybe not laughing, but the Kings have gone through multiple coaches the last few years because they keep on losing in the first round, whether it's to Edmonton, who ended up in a Stanley Cup final this year, to Colorado, who's very well could end up in a Stanley Cup final. Maybe it's not the coach with all these teams. I feel in all sports, I know it's the play, you try and spark the team, but to me, consistency is what we see, which breeds success. And, you've got a Bednar there in Colorado for years. You've got Cooper in Tampa for years now. And yes, there is success and cups to go with it, but maybe it is the consistency as opposed to just turning the wheel that has allowed these teams to stay on top. And maybe you've got to weather some bad times. I don't know. Am I crazy, Alan? Because the Kings are out again, and maybe it's not the coach.
I have multiple things to say about this topic, but first, I'll go with, at a certain point, it's got to fall on the players. And I know you can't just fire all your players and their other contracts, but at the end of the day, those are the guys in the battle. Those are the ones producing or not producing. Doesn't matter about X's and O's at that point. Your guys have to put up and be better than the guy across the way. And then, the NHL loves this. I mean, there's already Sharks fans who are talking about, well, the Sharks get off to another 0-6 start, or they have a bad October, or is Warzo going to get fired? After Warzo Ryan Warsofsky, of course, got them, 30 more points than they had the year before, and everyone's on the hot seat already because of a season that hasn't even happened. And then the Kings, of course, they go through their coaching cycle. They make it flip later than they should have, probably, a whole Olympic break later than they should have.
Right.
And I just kept thinking, is this what the NHL wanted? A team that had 32, 33 overtime losses, make it to the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, get swept, and that's the team who also had 4 less wins than the San Jose Sharks. And if I'm the NHL, there's multiple things I say is that I'd rather see the San Jose Sharks go and see what they could have done against Nathan McKinnon. And you have Macklin Celebrini, who happens to still be in the Hart Trophy conversation. So that comes out. He's also named a finalist for the Ted Lindsay this morning, which is voted on by your peers. I think that's the game, and that's the series you want, because then you have anything that happens, or you at least can sell that. You can sell, hey, these young Sharks, but instead you have the Los Angeles Kings. Yes, they're a major market, and then they lose in the first round again.
That's the thing, is it's the same result. They keep on losing in the first round. And listen, I know you can't fire the team. You've got to make some sort of a change. I just feel like there's so much evidence to show you that it's not, no matter what the sport. And this year we saw the late changes in the NHL, mirroring of what we saw a year ago in the NBA with the late coaching changes. And it just feels, I don't know, it feels like it's such an easy move that it's almost turned into like lip service to tell the fans, like, well, look, we fired our coach. It's like, well, yeah, but it's the same guys out there on the ice or the floor or the field or however you want to qualify it. And I don't know. I'm not laughing at the Kings. I'm just kind of shaking my head at where it's like, yeah, maybe the team just isn't good enough. Maybe the lack of,
when you're handing out no trade clauses, no move clauses to every single player on your roster, it's pretty difficult to make any sort of change, even if you want to make the massive trade that shakes things up, like Joe Thornton getting traded from the Bruins to the Sharks. Just going back to that doesn't happen in this day and age, because by year 6, Thornton probably has a no trade clause. He has a no movement clause. And so now the fact that you're handing these out regularly, and if I'm a player, for sure, I'm taking that luxury. I'm taking that security in a no trade and a no move. But you can't even make that move, which is, hey, let's make a big trade. Let's shake up this roster. Oh, wait, everyone has at least a 10-team no-trade list, and every team that would make that trade is probably on that 10-team no-trade list. So what are you going to do other than making a head coaching change for the NHL? And then in Major League Baseball, I just think it's probably too early at this point in the season that you're going to do some massive roster change, except, you did see Devers get traded relatively early last season to the San Francisco Giants. It just seems like, every organization is going to change the head coach first because you can replace that easier, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, but again, we can talk about some of the great coaches, that have been, fired from teams, whether it's Pete DeBoer, Bruce Cassidy, you go down the list in Major League Baseball, any number of managers that have let go, it's, I don't know. I was just kind of shaking my head out of this morning because I feel like things would have rectified if they had stayed with Thompson, in Philadelphia, and maybe not, but again, the previous results had been pretty good. So we'll see where it goes. You talk about the trades, the San Jose Sharks, I don't know what they're going to do this offseason, and it's going to be a very intriguing offseason, but what do you make of the rumors that are already starting to happen of where, Mike Grier is wheeling and dealing? Are fans getting over hopeful right now just because they know they have Macklin Celebrini and they know that it's going to happen sooner rather than later? But is it still patience is a virtue that needs to be leaned on for Mike Grier? Not to say that he shouldn't do anything, but I feel like fans are, talking all these blockbusters. They've already got either Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid in a teal sweater. I want to be like, all right, guys, let's cool it a little bit.
Not that I'm a conspiracy theorist at all, but I would take Connor McDavid in a teal jersey. But with that being said, that's not happening for at least that's not happening for at least another year. Now you need a Ducks to probably finish out the series, so there's more bad vibes going, and then you need something to happen next year where they don't make the playoffs and they don't get close to the Stanley Cup. And then as McDavid enters his contract year, then maybe you're making that deal. And again, as we always talk about this, what are you giving to the Oilers for Connor McDavid? It's Michael Misa, probably to start. It might be Will Smith. So remember what you're giving up for Connor McDavid. And yes, everything you give up for Connor McDavid is probably worth it. Yes, he'll be 31, 32 years old, but you're getting the generational player in the last 20 years in Connor McDavid to come over to San Jose. Yeah, that'd be great. But that is a couple years from now. So what are they going to do in the next few months? They're probably going to get at least 2 to 3 more defenders. Yeah, 100%. 100%. And so the Morgan Riley conversation that's been had, that's probably real to an extent. The Kesserling one that has kind of been on and off for a lot of ideas. And I don't know if that's more of a rumor or a guy that fits with the San Jose Sharks. There's also the Schneider rumor that's out there from New York, which that has definitely been an actual rumor on and off for a while. The Sharks seemingly were kind of interested in him leading up to the deadline and all this year. And, my guy that I've been talking about is Adam Fox, and that's just me making things up. This is me saying, this is a guy that would maybe fit what San Jose's doing. He's 29 years old. He still has plenty of real estate in front of him. But I don't know if that happens. And I also don't know, as we got later in the year, you hear all these things about Eric Polkamp, and maybe he's that offensive driver that you need and his shot. And then you have Quinoni come up and look pretty good there as well. He had moments where he moved the puck and was very good in transition. Obviously, he's smaller and he can get pushed off at times. But their defense is what's going to need to get changed. And I think it's probably going to be significant. If it's not in level, it has to be better talent as well, but I also think there's going to be at least 2 to 3 guys that they're going to bring in, whether they stick throughout the whole training camp or not, or how things shake out. They have to bring in bodies because the unit as a whole was just not good enough. At times, that also was Yaroslav Askarov wasn't good enough either this season, and he knows that. Every guy really seemingly on that defensive unit as a whole in the exit interviews knew that their unit needed to be better. But yeah, they have to do something back there. Frankly, also because they only have 2 guys under contract officially right now. And then up front, I think what you're going to see a lot of is new contracts for guys like Zach Ostapchuk, Colin Graff, Macklin and Will are probably getting new contracts. The way that it sounded in the exit interviews, it seems like that has already kind of been approached, that they kind of want to get this done heading into the season. So I think we're going to see some significant contracts being handed out, some money being handed out. And then if you're looking at the 12 up front, you maybe bring in, if you could get a top 6 forward, another winger, that'd be great. And then outside of that, though, it kind of is set, and you have pieces there, and you have some guys kind of pushing the door, and Beestead and Musty that can maybe give a run if they're still around as this offseason goes on for a spot. But it really seems like their top 12, their forward group is kind of set, depending on what Regenda does, and then if you bring back Reeves. But the defense is a whole lot more big. It's just such a bigger question mark than the forward group that I think Mike Greer has to address that this offseason.
Yeah, and I think Mike Greer knows what the deficiencies are. I mean, everyone brought up the fact that they need to have better results in keeping the puck out of the net. I mean, that is, as much as scoring goals is a premium in the NHL and in hockey in general, you've got to be able to not give up as many goals as the Sharks did. And I think that one of the things that's nice about San Jose is that if you look at the offense they have building with Macklin Celebrini, if Michael Misa takes a step forward, like I think we're all expecting him to do so in year number 2, Will Smith continues to be the guy. They don't have to be perfect defensively. They do have the ability to sort of outscore their problems, which makes all the rumor mongering that much more fun because, you know, the Sharks having not been in the playoffs since 2019, they were not part of those discussions for a while. Now that they have Macklin Celebrini, now that they have these other teams happening, or these other players happening, other teams and other players are looking at them and thinking, maybe that's a trade partner. I think having the Sharks in the midst of that chatter and that talk, it reminds me of where the Warriors were. And I know we've used that comparison before, but when people started talking, you know, when the Kevin Durant rumors first happened, everyone, that's as crazy as Connor McDavid. And it eventually did happen. I mean, that's the funny thing about it is when it first came out, it sounded like nonsense, except for it didn't happen. But now at this point, it's fun because you've got the Sharks as part of the discussion, which to me is a big part about raising your profile overall, because if fans are paying attention to your team as part of the rumor mill, that means you're having success in one way or another.
I think it's 2 things too. You know, Macklin Celebrini is going to bring players, and there's always that talk about, California taxes. And we heard Barclay Goodrow say in the exit interviews again that, it's a real thing. But if you have a chance to win, that tax situation becomes a whole lot less of an issue, because if you think you can win a Stanley Cup with said franchise, I don't care what your pay cut's going to be. They all want to win a Stanley Cup. Ryan Reeves has been chasing this down for 950, 60 games. He wants a Stanley Cup. He talked about that as well. They're all chasing Stanley Cups. So if they think Macklin Celebrini is that guy that can lead them to a Stanley Cup, that issue with the taxes isn't going to be as much of an issue. As we've seen throughout history with California and the Bay Area, when the teams are good, no one's really talking about that. People will come, or you'll be able to sign. You would hope you could sign it. And then also, though, if you look at the roster makeup and you're looking at the forward group, you see down the middle, you have 4 quality centers, 4 centers, 4 pivots that are going to be solid contributors. And you can say, all right, top, you got Michael Misa came on really hard came on strong at the back end of that season. Last 10 games, he looked like a different player. Then you have Alex Wenberg, who can play 2-way hockey. And then you have Zach Ostapchuk, who I think is probably going to build himself into that third line center over time, but Wenberg will hold it down. But if you're a free agent, you're looking in, you're like, those 4 centers, they're going to have that locked down. all we need to do is come in and provide a little bit more insurance on the back end. And then you have what the Sharks still believe, and many still believe, there's so much talent in Yaroslav Askarov that they have the number one netminder of the future. So they have the pieces there. So when you're a free agent looking at San Jose Sharks, it looks like they have something building. It's not just a hodgepodge of things like, oh, is this going to work? Are there pieces still missing? Yes, there's pieces still missing. Of course, every team, every offseason, teams that are going to lose in the Stanley Cup final are going to think they have holes to miss. The winner of the Stanley Cup is going to come into the next offseason and say, oh, we have holes that we need to fill. But the San Jose Sharks and Mike Greer and his group, along with Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, Colin Graff, all these guys, they have a direction. And I think that's important for free agents when you look at teams is, does the team that I'm going to, do they have a direction? Can I see them actually competing for a Stanley Cup? I still think, though, bottom line, San Jose is probably going to have to overpay for a free agent or two if that's the route they end up going.
Well, and that's been the long-term issue for the San Jose Sharks, as many of their big acquisitions have been by way of a trade, whether it's Brent Burns, whether it's Erik Karlsson, whether it's Joe Thornton. Yes, they had some homegrown talents like Logan Couture, who turned into a star, Tomas Hertl, Timo Meier, you go down the list. But Dan Boyle was another one that they acquired in a trade, and that's been long the way it's gone. But it's funny that the tax issue is brought up because it's never brought up with the Kings, I don't feel like. It's not brought up the same way. But if you talk to every single player who comes over to San Jose, they all want to stay in the Bay Area. They all love living here. Their wives, their families, they all love it. Because, you and I have lived in the Bay Area our entire lives. We know it's a pretty darn nice place to live. And it's also that much more fun when the Sharks are in it and back into that conversation. I'm curious from your point of view, how much more people were talking to you about the Sharks in your life, not just because, you're the host, but just because they were suddenly interested in Macklin Celebrini. Because and we've used these comparisons to death, but it's the only kind of frame of reference I have is where when Steph Curry started taking off, everyone wanted to talk about the Warriors. Now with Macklin Celebrini taking off, people want to talk about the Sharks.
Oh, I think it's exponential even from the first season that I did. Is that everyone wants to know about this team. Is it for real? Is it going to be a flash in the pan? Is Macklin Celebrini as good as people are saying? Like my nephew, he wasn't totally into hockey, and I don't know if he's still totally in, but he'll talk to me. He asks me questions about Macklin, and my nephew is in high school over there towards you guys out there in Concord, and he's probably 3 years younger, a couple years, younger than Macklin. And so that's pretty cool that I think there's this generation that we're talking about, these younger fans that have really picked it up. And then you have the fans that have been there, that kind of ebbed and flowed. They're coming back in it. But yeah, it's seemingly everywhere you go, it's people talking about it, talking about the Sharks and what they're building and who they are. And then you see them more exposure for these young guys and for the team. It just seems like everybody's kind of on board now. And I think it goes hand in hand, obviously, with 71 and what he did at the Olympics. But everybody wants to talk about it. And you couldn't get tickets at the end of the year. And if you did, you were going to pay a pretty penny for it. I'm pretty sure the game after the Olympic break was Oilers and Sharks is within that first handful of games. Mm-hmm. Those tickets were going for $200.
Yeah.
Second hand. That's peak San Jose Sharks. That's when you couldn't get tickets, that's how much you were paying. And so if that's where it's going back to, it's only going to get worse in a sense, but better in a sense, right? It's twofold. It's going to be harder and harder to get Sharks tickets because the tank's going to be sold out game after game after game to see what these young guys who aren't going to be young in 2 to 3 years, they're going to be in their mid-20s, and they're going to be taking over this league seemingly. And it's better because this is the time for the San Jose Sharks, as you pointed out, to me, is that, and I agree with you, is that every other team's kind of in this kind of flux around the Bay Area. What's happening with these teams? Where are they going? This is the time, if you're San Jose, if you're a hockey fan, to really press forward because you can kind of take up this space where I think there is an opportunity. And San Jose so far this last year, they did it, and I think it helped. They had a lot of viral moments, whether that's on social media with Judy Jupiter. Their social media team was very good. Helicopter. But also they knew what they were doing. And I think also when you have the face of the league in Macklin Celebrini, you got to lean into it. And the San Jose Sharks are. He had 115 points. He's breaking records left and right. And third best teenage season by anyone ever.
Pretty studly stuff. We got to get out. Alan, I appreciate your time as always. You've allowed me to close the show, and we will talk again soon. All right, man?
All right, sounds good.
Again, that is Alan Hoshida, the host of Sharks Pre- and Postgame Live, NBC Sports California. We are out of time, however, here on Sportsphone KNBR. I'll be back with you tomorrow night. Give me one run to talk about. Give me one run for the Giants to talk about. That's what I am really, really, really hopeful for. Thanks to Cole Pelt as well as Jordan Petrari back at the KNBR studios for doing a great job and dealing with me tonight and all the fun that I bring. And I use quotes around the term fun to say it's all the problems I bring. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. But that wraps for Sports Phone KNBR tonight. I'll see y'all tomorrow after the Giants and Phillies do battle again. Peace.